The day my father's obituary hit the front page, the whole world called him Singapore's richest man. I just called him Dad. And then, a week later, I found out he left me nothing, not a share, not a company, not a single dollar of his 13 billion US dollars fortune. Instead, he skipped me. He skipped all of us and made 6 of his grandchildren billionaires overnight. My name is not the one you've seen in the headlines, and I'm going to keep it that way. Let the articles talk about the Singapore paint tycoon, the self-made billionaire, the quiet old man who outlived every prediction. I'm here to tell you what it felt like to be his daughter, to be the woman sitting in the second row at his funeral, smiling politely for cameras, while my heart was busy cracking in places no one could see. To be the child who thought she knew her father until his will was read. If you're watching this, don't worry about remembering the stock numbers or company acronyms. Forget the valuations, the Forbes rankings, the business jargon. Just remember this. You think you know your family. You don't. Not until money walks into the room. The funeral of a billionaire. They held his funeral like a state event. Black cars in a neat row outside the temple. Men in dark suits, their watches more expensive than my first apartment. Giant wreaths from banks, conglomerates, foreign dignitaries. There were cameras, of course. Journalists perched like crows outside the entrance, whispering into microphones about the quiet king of paint and the empire he built from nothing. Inside, incense thickened the air. My father's photo sat there, larger than life, framed in gold. I stood at the entrance, bowing, accepting condolences I barely heard. I'm so sorry for your loss. He was a visionary. Your father changed the industry. I smiled. I nodded. I thanked them. I played my role. Dutiful daughter. Eldest girl. The one who learned to sit straight, keep her hair neat, and never embarrass the family name. My brothers flanked me like pillars. My older brother, stone-faced, jaw-set, the careful, neutral expression of a man who'd been groomed his whole life to be the son, the one everyone assumed would inherit the crown. My younger brother, eyes red, hands shaking just slightly, as if he wasn't sure where to put them now that our father was gone. We didn't speak much. Not really. We didn't have to. The last few months had been a blur of hospital visits, quiet conversations, and the awareness that time was running out. But nobody imagined what was coming. At one point, the reporters outside yelled louder. I turned my head. The grandchildren had arrived. My father's legacy, walking on 2 fresh, confident legs. 6 of them. 3 from my older brother, 2 from my younger brother, and my daughter, the only grandchild from me. They were dressed in black, but the way they walked, the way people turned to greet them, made it clear. The world had already started shifting its gaze from the old man in the photograph to the next line of succession. My father used to joke that children were the paint primer, but grandchildren were the glossy finish. At the time, I laughed. Now, the joke didn't feel very funny. The man before the money. Everyone knows my father as the tycoon, as the founder of Nipsey Holdings, the man who brought Nippon Paint across Southeast Asia, who turned color into an empire and factories into billions. But I knew him before all that. I knew him when his hands still smelled like solvent and metal. When he came home from the factory so exhausted, he'd fall asleep at the dining table. I knew him when we still lived in a cramped rented flat with peeling walls and a single fan that the three of us children would fight to stand in front of on hot nights. He didn't become a billionaire overnight. He became a father first. I remember his old bicycle, the one with the dented basket. He'd come home with sacks of rice tied with raffia. My mother would scold him for buying too much, and he'd say, "Better to have extra." You never know when work will stop. He grew up with nothing. That fear never left him. When he started in paint, people thought he was crazy. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't prestigious. It was chemicals, dust, and long hours. But he saw something we didn't. Everything needs paint, he told me once when I was 11, helping him stack little cans in our neighbor's garage. You don't notice it when it's there, but you notice when it's not. That's how good business works. Maybe that was the first lesson of many. Good business is what people don't see. The real deals happen in rooms without windows. The real decisions are made in silences. And the real betrayals? They're written in ink. That only shows up when you shine a light on it. The first time he chose money over family. If I'm honest with you, and I'm trying very hard to be, my father didn't become different only after he got rich. The signs were there earlier. We just told ourselves it was ambition. When I was 17, I begged him to come to my school performance. I had a small solo in the choir, and I'd practiced for weeks. The night before, he said, "I'll try." You learn, growing up in a house like ours, that "I'll try" means don't hope too hard. Still, I did. I stood on that stage in my ill-fitting uniform, lights hot on my face, singing my heart out. The whole time, my eyes kept darting to the back of the hall, to the door, to see if he'd appear. He never did. Later, I found out he'd been in a meeting with a Japanese executive. That meeting would eventually become the partnership that transformed him from a local businessman into a regional giant. "Can't you be proud of him?" my mother asked me when I sulked. "I wanted him there," I replied. "He did it for us," she said. Back then, I believed her. Back then, I thought love and sacrifice always ended up on the same side. Now, I'm not so sure. When the money changed the air. By the time I turned 25, things shifted. We moved out of the old flat into a house with a gate and a guard. My father started wearing tailored suits instead of the same faded shirts. My mother started going for facials and hair appointments. There were dinner invitations, business lunches, charity galas. We had arrived. Sort of. But if you ask me where the real change happened, I can tell you the exact moment. It was the first time I heard someone ask me, "So, which one are you?" We were at a corporate event. My father was introducing us to one of his partners. "This is my family," he said. The man shook my brother's hands firmly. When he got to me, his grip loosened. "And she is?" I smiled awkwardly. "His daughter." He chuckled. "Yes, yes, but which one are you? The lawyer? The banker? The one learning the business?" I hesitated. "I'm a teacher." The man's eyes flickered, just slightly. "Oh," he said. Just like that, I disappeared. My brothers got questions about the company, the future, expansion plans. I got, "Do you want more wine?" That was the first time I felt it. The invisible line running down the center of our family. On one side, the business. On the other side, everyone else. My father used to say casually, "The company is my fourth child." None of us realized he wasn't joking. The night he almost died. The first time. People think billionaires are invincible. They're not. Heart attacks don't care about net worth. Stroke doesn't recognize Forbes rankings. The first time my father was rushed to the hospital, we all thought, this is it. It was 10 years before he actually died. 10 years before that final, quiet exit everybody wrote about. I remember standing outside the ICU, my fingers cold, my brothers pacing. My mother sat in a plastic chair, her face wiped of makeup, hair undone, whispering prayers as if she could barter his life with God. We didn't talk about money that night. We talked about memories. Remember when he fell off the bicycle? Remember how he burned the rice that one time? Remember when he scolded us for wasting water? We remembered a man, not a tycoon. The next morning, the doctor came out, tired but smiling. "He's stable," he said. "He's lucky." My father, of course, called it a reminder. A reminder that time is short, he told us once he could sit up. We must plan for the future. Back then, I thought he was talking about his health. I didn't realize he was already thinking about his will. How the grandchildren became stars. You have to understand something. In our culture, grandchildren shine with a special light. No matter how successful or unsuccessful you are as a child, once you give your parents grandchildren, suddenly your value jumps. When my older brother's first son was born, my father turned into a different person. The stern businessman became a soft, smiling old man who would lie on the floor, making car sounds, who'd give up midday naps just to watch a baby sleep. My mother used to tease him. When we were small, you were never home. He'd wave her off. Last time I needed to work. Now I enjoy. I watch this with mixed feelings. Joy, because it was sweet. Bitterness, because this man, the one who had time, the one who slowed down, was someone I had never met when I was little. And somewhere, quietly, a thought grew. He is building something for them now. Not for us, for the future, for the next generation. We were the bridge. They were the destination. Still, I loved them. All 6 of them. I watched them grow from toddlers to teenagers, each one different. The studious one, the wild one, the shy one, the funny one, the one who loved numbers, the one who loved art. At family dinners, my father would sit at the head of the table and watch them with a pride that shimmered like heat. "You," he'd say to one, "will go far. You," to another, "have a sharp mind." He never said things like that to us. To us, he said, "Work harder." To them, he said, "Dream bigger." Maybe that was the second lesson. He had already moved his heart from one generation to the next. We just didn't know he'd move his money too. The whispers before the will. The thing about very rich people is they don't just die. They leave a vacuum of expectation, of speculation, of entitlement, After the funeral, while the incense still lingered, and the wreaths hadn't even wilted yet, the whispers started. So, what happens now? Who takes over? How will the assets be divided? It wasn't just us. It was the board, the partners, the bankers, the lawyers. Everybody had a theory. My older brother, people assumed, would be the natural heir. He'd been the most involved in the company, sitting on committees, attending meetings with our father, representing the family at events. My younger brother had carved out his own career on the side, but still sat on a few subsidiary boards. Me? I was the odd one out, the teacher, the one who did some charity work, helped my mother organize family gatherings, and stayed out of business matters. So, when people talked about succession, I was rarely in the picture. But that didn't mean I didn't think about it. I'm going to be very honest here. I didn't expect billions. I didn't want control. I didn't dream of becoming some kind of paint princess CEO. I wanted fairness, a sense that he saw us as equal, if not in responsibility, at least in love. A father must be equal with his children, my mother used to say. She believed that until the end. I'm still not sure if he ever did. The lawyer's invitation. The invitation came in a white envelope, formal, embossed, my father's name at the top. A request to attend the reading of the will. We all got one, me, my two brothers, and each of our families. The grandchildren, too. I remember sitting at my dining table, the letter in my hands, my tea growing cold beside me. I called my mother. "Have you seen it?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "We will go together." "Do you know what it says?" I asked, hesitating. She paused. "Your father discussed some things with me before he passed, but the final version I haven't seen." Her voice was careful. Too careful. "Is it bad?" I asked softly. She sighed. "It's not about good or bad. It's about what he believed was right. If you're watching this, you know that sentence means one thing. You're not going to like it." The day he spoke. From the grave. The law firm was in a glass tower overlooking the city. From the conference room, you could see the skyline: steel, concrete, cranes. Buildings my father had probably helped paint at one point in his long career. We arrived in silence. My mother, small and pale, her cheongsam perfectly pressed. My older brother, in a dark suit, his wife beside him. Their three children sitting straight. Their faces a mix of curiosity and tension. My younger brother, slightly less formal but still stiff. His wife gripping his hand under the table. Their two kids whispering to each other before being silenced with a look. My daughter sat next to me, her eyes darting around anxiously. I squeezed her hand. "It'll be fine," I lied. The lawyer entered. He was the kind of man who had probably watched 100 families crumble and kept every secret behind tight professional lips. "Firstly, my condolences," he said. "Your father was a remarkable client." Such an odd phrase. A remarkable client. Like he was a project, a puzzle, an account. The lawyer opened a thick file. "As per Mr. Go's instructions, I will read his last will and testament in full." You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster, just at the top, about to drop? That's how my stomach felt. He began with the formalities. Name, identification number, declaration of sound mind, the usual. Then he started listing assets: Nipsia Holding shares, real estate, cash, trusts, overseas investments, numbers that made my head spin. He spoke calmly, as if reading out a grocery list, but each line was a mountain of wealth. And then he got to the part that mattered. The distribution of my estate shall be as follows. I didn't breathe. The cut. In movies, when someone gets bad news, the sound fades, the camera zooms, and everything blurs dramatically. Real life isn't like that. In real life, you hear everything: the air conditioning humming, the scrape of a chair, your own heartbeat pounding so hard you think the table might shake. The lawyer read the first name, my eldest nephew, a percentage of shares, a number that made my brother's eyes widen. Then the second grandchild, another percentage, a building, a trust. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth, my daughter. For a moment, I felt relief. At least she wasn't forgotten. At least she was seen. Each grandchild, in turn, was assigned a portion. Enough that, combined with existing trusts and holdings, they would each become billionaires on paper. I glanced at them. Their faces were flushed, stunned. They hadn't expected this. None of us had. And now, the lawyer said, turning the page, with regard to my 3 children. I straightened. My brothers looked up. My mother clasped her hands so tightly her knuckles whitened. In recognition of the support given to me throughout my lifetime, the lawyer read, I leave to each of my 3 children a personal cash bequest of... He named the amount. It was large, if you considered an ordinary family. But in the context of billions, it was a fraction, a sliver, a polite token. And further, the lawyer continued, they shall receive no shares in Nipsey Holdings or related corporate entities, as my intention is for the business to pass directly to the 3rd generation, ensuring long-term continuity and avoiding potential disputes or fragmentation among my children. The room went very, very quiet. My older brother's jaw clenched. My younger brother stared at the table. I felt something inside me slip. He had not only skipped us, he had written down, in cold, legal language, that he didn't trust us with his life's work. Not enough. Not like he trusted them. The grandchildren. Our children. The generation he believed would save the company from us. The justification. The lawyer finished reading. There were more details, of course, conditions, trustees, mechanisms. But I barely heard them. When he closed the file, the silence was suffocating. My older brother spoke first. This is a joke, right? He said, trying to laugh. The lawyer shook his head gently. I assure you, it is not. But I'm on the board, my brother snapped. I've been involved for 20 years. He always said, we would manage things together. The lawyer's expression didn't change. Your father was very clear in his final instructions. He believed succession through the 3rd generation would reduce conflict and preserve the integrity of the company. Conflict? My brother almost choked on the word. We are the conflict? My younger brother slammed his fist on the table. So we're just... What? Obsolete? He let out a bitter laugh. He skips us, just like that, after everything? My mother finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the anger like a knife. This was his choice, she said. We may not agree, but he believed he was protecting what he built. I looked at her, shocked. You knew? I whispered. She didn't meet my eyes. I knew parts, not the details. So you knew he was planning to skip us, my older brother said bitterly. He didn't say it like that, she replied. He said he wanted to avoid fights after he was gone. He got his wish. Instead of fighting over the company, we fought over him. The fight after the will. You might think we all stayed civilized. We didn't. The moment we left that glass tower, everything we'd suppressed for decades came roaring out. In the elevator, my older brother turned on my mother. You let him do this, he hissed. I'm not the one who signed, she snapped back. Your father made up his own mind. My younger brother paced. He trusted the kids more than us. Kids who haven't even worked a day in the company. He trusted time more than you, my mother said, quietly. He thought you'd fight. He thought greed would destroy everything. And this isn't greed, my older brother demanded. Leaving billions to 18-year-olds? No, she said, it's fear. We drove home in separate cars. My daughter didn't speak. I could feel her eyes on me, searching for a reaction. Anger. Tears. Something. I didn't give her anything because I didn't know what I felt. Not yet. That night, the messages started. Relatives, friends, colleagues. Is it true? Wah, your dad's so smart la. Skip the children, go straight to grandchildren. Good move. Avoid drama later. Avoid drama later. As if drama now was somehow cleaner, less messy, less painful. We didn't avoid anything. We just moved the explosion forward. When your child becomes richer than you overnight. I woke up the next morning to the strangest realization. On paper, my daughter was now one of the richest young women in the country. And I was comfortable, not struggling, not poor, but nowhere near her. My own child had leaped past me in a matter of minutes. Are you okay? She asked quietly over breakfast. I stared at her, at the girl I had carried, raised, scolded, hugged. You're a billionaire now, I said bluntly. She flinched. Don't say it like that. How should I say it? I asked. That your grandfather trusted you more than he trusted your mother. That's not fair, she whispered. I didn't ask for this. I sighed, closed my eyes. Guilt crashed over me. It wasn't her fault. She hadn't written the will. She hadn't made the decision. She hadn't drawn the line that split our family in two. He had. I'm sorry, I said softly. I didn't mean it. She came around the table and hugged me. If you want, she whispered, I can give some to you. Or put your name on. No, I said sharply. She jumped. I don't want your money, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I want my father's respect. And that, I realized, I was never going to get. Not from him, not now, not ever. Because he had spoken his last word in ink. What the world saw. The news broke within days. Of course it did. You can't move billions around without someone noticing. Tycoon bypasses children, makes grandchildren billionaires. Unconventional succession plan shocks Asian business circles. Old guard skipped third generation to inherit paint empire. Some articles praised him. A visionary, ahead of his time, ensured continuity. Others questioned. What kind of father leaves so little to his children? Was this punishment or protection? Our faces appeared in blurry, long lens photos. His children, his grandchildren. Speculation followed. Maybe we'd disappointed him. Maybe we'd fought too much. Maybe he thought we couldn't handle it. Maybe. Not one of those articles knew what he said to me the last time we were alone. His last real conversation with me. It was about 2 weeks before he died. He was already very weak, but his mind was still sharp. I'd gone to see him in the hospital, bringing his favorite biscuits, even though I knew he couldn't eat them. He was staring out the window when I walked in. "Papa," I said softly. He looked at me and smiled faintly. "You came." As if I wouldn't. I sat by his bed, adjusted his blanket. For a while, we talked about simple things. The nurses, the weather, my work. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You always stayed away from the company." It wasn't a question. I nodded. Yes. "Why?" he asked. I hesitated. Because every time I went near it, I felt small. Because every conversation turned into a meeting. Because I wasn't a son. Because by the time I was old enough to understand it, it felt like his mistress. Always there. Always taking his time, his attention, his energy. "I wanted my own life," I said finally. He nodded slowly. "Do you regret it?" he asked. I thought about the students whose lives I'd touched, the children I'd taught to read, the teenagers I'd guided through exams and heartbreaks. "No," I said, "I don't." He smiled a little. Good. He coughed, then added, "You know, not everyone needs to sit on a board to be valuable." I blinked. Then why? I wanted to ask. Did you write me out of your business story? But I didn't. Because we were so close to the end. Because I didn't want to spend our last conversation fighting. He patted my hand weakly. "You took care of your mother," he said. "That is something the company cannot pay for." I swallowed hard. "Then why?" I started. He closed his eyes, tired. "I have a plan," he murmured. "For the future." I didn't ask. I was afraid of the answer. Now, I wish I had. The letter he left for us. A few weeks after the will reading, the lawyer contacted us again. "There is one more thing," he said. "Your father left a letter. For the three of you." We met him in a smaller room this time. No skyline, no boardroom table. Just 3 chairs, a folder, and the weight of expectation. The lawyer slid the envelope across. My older brother picked it up, then handed it to me. "You read," he said. His voice was hoarse. I opened it carefully. My father's handwriting filled 3 pages. Neat, controlled, familiar. My children. If you are reading this, then I am no longer around to argue with you in person. You have probably heard my will by now. And you are probably angry. Good. It means you care. I know what I did will hurt you, but I ask you to listen just once more to your father. When I started in paint, I had nothing. No education, no connections, no money. All I had was time. Time to work, time to fail, time to try again, time to build. When you were born, I had begun to have something: a small business, a small family, a small future. I made many mistakes with all three. You saw me build the company. You saw me grow. You also saw me change. I became more cautious, more stubborn, more afraid to lose what I had built. This is the curse of the self-made man. We clutch so tightly at our creation that we strangle it. I watched other families like ours crumble. Brothers fighting brothers in boardrooms, sisters dragged into court, children suing each other over land, shares, houses, parents dying twice, once in the hospital and once again in the newspapers. I did not want that for you. You may say, "You could have trusted us, Papa." But trust is not only about love, it is also about fear. I feared what power and money would do to you. You each have your own strengths. You also have your own pride. I was afraid that if I gave you the company, it would become a battlefield. So I chose another way. Bypassing you is not a punishment. It is a shield. I gave you enough to live well, to be independent, to be comfortable. I gave the company to the grandchildren because they are still unformed. They have time to learn together, to be guided. They will start from a different place. They will not have grown up in my shadow the way you did. You may say I did not see you, but I did. I saw my eldest son who worked beside me, who carried the weight of expectation too heavily. I saw my younger son who tried to find his own path and was always compared. I saw my daughter who chose her own world and still came back whenever we needed her. I know it feels like a rejection. It is not. It is an admission that I was not a good enough father to give you both love and power without poison. So I chose love in my own twisted way. If you cannot forgive me now, I understand. Maybe you will later. Maybe you will not. But remember this: blood is not only about inheritance, it is about responsibility. You may not own the company, but you still own our name. How you carry it, that is up to you. Take care of your mother. Take care of each other. And if you can, guide your children so they do not repeat our mistakes. Love in the only way I knew how. Papa. My hand shook by the time I finished. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, my younger brother wiped his face roughly. "He's still controlling us from the grave," he muttered. My older brother stared at the letter. "I chose love," he said bitterly. Funny way of showing it. I folded the pages carefully. And for the first time since the will reading, I cried. Not for the money, but for the man who had been so afraid of losing what he built that he'd forgotten. What he built wasn't just a company, it was us. When money isn't the only thing you lose. The months that followed were strange. My brothers barely spoke to each other. My older brother threw himself deeper into work, taking on roles in other companies, proving to himself, to the world, to our dead father, that he didn't need the inheritance to succeed. My younger brother moved overseas, claiming it was for the kids' education, but I knew he just wanted distance. Our group chats became quieter. My mother tried to keep us together. Monthly dinners, family gatherings, traditional festivals, but there was always an invisible ghost at the table. The question no one said out loud: if he'd trusted us, would we be different now? The grandchildren were pulled into it too, whether they liked it or not. Suddenly, they were invited to meetings, given advisors, tutored in finance, corporate governance, board dynamics. They didn't become spoiled overnight. No. Don't picture them rolling in sports cars and throwing champagne around. It was quieter than that, heavier. Imagine being 19 and having people in suits nod at you like you're the future of a $1 billion empire, when you still don't know how to file your own taxes. Some of them rebelled. Some of them leaned in. Some of them quietly asked us, their parents, for help. It was the cruelest irony. We'd been deemed too risky to control the company, but we were still expected to raise its next rulers. The day my daughter asked me the hardest question. It was about a year after my father's death. My daughter and I were walking along the river, the city lights reflecting on the water, the air thick with humidity and unspoken things. She'd been quieter lately, more thoughtful, less carefree. She'd started attending meetings with her cousins, sitting in rooms where men discussed strategies in acronyms and numbers. At one point, she stopped. "Mom," she said softly, "if Gong Gong had left the company to you instead of me, what would you have done?" I looked at her young, serious face, at the worry in her eyes, at the question behind the question. "Do you resent me? Do you wish it were different?" I thought about answering quickly with something easy. Something like, "It doesn't matter," or "He did what he thought was best." But she deserved more than that. "I don't know," I said honestly. Maybe I would have been overwhelmed. Maybe I would have made mistakes. Maybe we would have fought. I took a deep breath. What I do know is this: I never wanted you to carry this weight so young. "It's not all bad," she said faintly. "It's an opportunity." "Yes," I replied. "A big one. But opportunities can be cages too, if you're not careful." She looked at me. "Do you hate him for what he did?" I thought about my father, about his bicycle, about his calloused hands, about his absence, about his will, about his letter. "I don't hate him," I said slowly. "I disagree with him deeply. I wish he had trusted us more. I wish he'd talked to us. I wish he'd believed that we could love each other more than we loved money." I smiled sadly. "But hating him won't change anything. It'll only change me. And I don't want to become that person." She nodded, eyes shining. "Do you hate me?" I asked quietly. Her head snapped up. "What? No, of course not." "You're the symbol," I said gently, "of what he chose, of what we didn't get. That's a heavy thing to be, even if you didn't ask for it." She blinked back tears. "I just want us to still be us," she whispered. "Not this story everyone tells." I pulled her into a hug. "Then we write our own story," I murmured. Not the one the newspapers want. Not the one the lawyers wrote. Ours. What I wish I could tell him now. People ask me, sometimes, in quiet moments, if your father appeared in front of you now, and you had 5 minutes with him, what would you say? The angry part of me wants to scream. How could you? How could you measure our worth in percentages and bypass us like liabilities? How could you trust strangers more than your own children? The sad part of me wants to plead, why didn't you talk to us? Why didn't you let us try? Why did you think the only way to protect us from fighting was to cut us out of the battle entirely? But the part of me that's had time, the part that sat through therapy, through late night talks, through watching my family splinter and slowly, painfully try to piece itself back together, would probably ask something else. Were you happy, Papa? For all his billions, for all his factories, for all his accolades? I don't know the answer to that. I know he was driven. I know he was proud. I know he was afraid. But happy? I'm not sure. I'd also tell him this. You thought skipping us would save us from fighting. It didn't. It just changed how we fought. Instead of battling over assets, we battled over meaning, over love, over legacy, over what it means to be a father, a child, a family. What happens after the drama? If you were expecting some explosive ending, someone contesting the will, a court battle, a dramatic reversal, you're going to be disappointed. We didn't go to war in public. We didn't drag each other through the courts. We didn't tear the company apart. In the end, we did something much quieter. We lived with it. My brothers and I eventually started talking again, in small steps. At first, only about practical things. Mother's medical appointments, the grandchildren's education, where to celebrate Chinese New Year. Then, over time, the conversation deepened. A joke here, a memory there, a shared complaint about our knees. We never fully healed. How could we? But we learned to exist in the same room without that letter floating above us like a curse. My mother grew frailer. Sometimes she'd look at us and say, "He wanted peace?" "Did he get it?" I asked her once. She thought about it. "In his head, maybe," she replied. "In reality, peace is not something you can write into a will. It is something you build day by day in how you talk, how you forgive, how you show up." She sighed. That he was not very good at. We laughed a little, because it was true. He'd mastered building companies. He never quite mastered building conversations. The grandchildren took their places, slowly, cautiously. Some joined the company. Some stayed outside but sat on boards. Some pursued their own paths entirely. They meet now in rooms where my father once sat, discussing strategies he planted seeds for decades ago. Sometimes they ask us for advice. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes we give it anyway. Why I'm telling you this. If you've watched this far, you might be wondering, why am I telling you all this? Why share the dirty laundry of a family everyone only sees in glossy business profiles and philanthropic dinners? Because behind every headline like, "Grandchildren become billionaires overnight," there are people like me. Children who gave up time, attention, and emotional space so their fathers could build empires. Children who learned to translate love through absence, who saw ambition swallow softness, who lost more than money when the will was red. Because this is bigger than just my family. In Asia, we worship success. We bow to the self-made man. We tell stories about rags to riches and pretend the middle part, the children, the sacrifices, the emotional price, is just footnote material. We don't talk about what happens when that man has to decide who comes after me, who do I trust, what do I value more, control or connection. We don't talk about how estate planning can rip open wounds you didn't know you had, how skipping a generation might make sense on paper, but break hearts at the same time. And because maybe, somewhere out there, another daughter is sitting in a law firm, listening to her father's will, realizing in real time that legacy and love don't always sit on the same side of the balance sheet. If that's you, I want you to hear this. You are more than what your parents left you, or didn't leave you. You are more than the shares, the trusts, the properties, the percentages. You are not a rounding error in someone else's estate plan. You are a person. What I learned from the man who skipped me. My father taught me many things, mostly without saying them. He taught me that poverty can carve fear so deep into a person that even billions can't fill it. He taught me that building something big and shiny doesn't automatically make you good at the small, quiet work of being a parent. He taught me that love can be real and flawed at the same time, that you can be genuinely proud of your children and still not trust them with your empire, that you can try to protect your family and still hurt them in the process. But he also taught me this. You can choose what you pass on, not just your money, your stories, your patterns, your silence, your courage. I don't have billions to give my daughter. I don't have a company to hand over, but I can give her something my father struggled with. A voice, space to be angry, room to question, permission to value relationships over spreadsheets. The real inheritance. The world sees a billionaire's will as the climax of a story. The big reveal, the final twist. But for us, it wasn't the end. It was a diagnosis, a mirror held up to our family, showing us the cracks we'd papered over with success, etiquette, and expensive wallpaper. It forced us to confront questions we'd avoided. What do we actually want from each other? What does it mean to be siblings without a father to orbit around? What does it mean to be a daughter who isn't the beneficiary of her father's main legacy? Years later, when I look back, I realize something I never thought I'd say. In his own clumsy, control-obsessed way, he gave me a strange kind of freedom. By not tying me to the company, he left me free to be who I had always been, without guilt. Just a teacher, just a mother, just a woman who didn't have to sit in boardrooms pretending to care about EBITDA and expansion plans. A woman who could grieve her father without also grieving a position she was never allowed to want. Would I change things if I could? Yes. I would have wanted more conversation, more honesty, more trust. I would have wanted him to look me in the eye and say, I don't know how to do this. I'm afraid you'll fight, and I don't know how to stop it. I would have wanted a chance to prove him wrong, but Life isn't a negotiation you get to redo. You get what you get. And then you decide who you become because of it. If you're still here, if you're still watching, hearing my story, here's what I'll leave you with. If you're a parent with something, anything to leave behind, talk to your children now. Not through a lawyer, not through a cold document, in person. Tell them what you fear. Tell them what you hope. Let them argue. Let them cry. Let them be part of the plan instead of just the recipients of its aftermath. Because money can outlive you, but so can resentment. And if you're a child, waiting in some metaphorical conference room for someone to tell you what you're worth on paper, remember, your value was never meant to be measured in a will. It was meant to be felt in the way you were seen, heard, and loved while your parents were still breathing. If they failed at that, it's not your fault. If they succeeded, no amount of skipped inheritance can erase it. My father was Singapore's richest man when he died, but his real wealth, for better or worse, is scattered in the people sitting around that conference table that day. 3 adult children relearning how to be family without him, 6 grandchildren trying to carry a paint empire and their own dreams at the same time. A widow trying to believe his final decisions were made in love, not just fear. And me, a daughter, bypassed on paper, but still very much her father's child. For better, for worse, for always. If stories like this tug at something in you, if you've lived through complicated families, wills, secrets, or quiet hurts, don't forget to leave a comment with your own experience, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories told straight from the heart. Because sometimes the richest stories aren't about money at all.